Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, and we proceed. We are getting closer to the final of our third conference, and we'll speak about one of the most interesting topics for me, for example, is the economy. So we'll speak about money and bank sector. What is the economy of our industry? What is the economic portrait? Whether we have this portrait of a stakeholder in the industry, so we understand the basic economic laws are the same and fundamentals, but are they differ from one stakeholder to another? And next to me, I have my very good friend Sergey Rybakov, Director General of Slava Foundation, and we have Ms. Zvarykina, Professor of the International University of International Affairs, and she will contribute to our discussion. And we also have first Vice President of Gazprom Bank, Ms. Tretyak. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm very happy to meet you and to welcome. So we'll start with Natalia, First Vice President, Gazprom Bank, one of the largest banks in the country. What is the economic portrait of the industry? Is it something homogeneous? Can we describe this portrait? So what is this tourist industry in terms of the main stakeholders? Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the conference for bringing this discussion on stage and that you focus on the sustainable environmental tourism and for giving me the floor. I would like to speak about the perspectives of finance of the industry as part of the comprehensive approach. Can you hear my presentation? Before we wait for the presentation, just a couple of words. As for the achieving the objectives of the sustainable development approved by the United States and the Paris Agreement that was signed by Russia in 2009, introduced this ESG approach. It's a business activeness with the with meeting the principles of a sustainable development. There's conscientious approach and attitude towards the environment, and in more narrow understanding, ESG is the responsible business management. And ESG, environment, social, governmental approaches require the understanding of demands of the investor. If we look at the slide, we'll see that in 2020, more than 2,800 signed the agreement of responsible investments and obtained the and signed the commitment to invest more than 50% of the investments in green projects. It's about $45 trillion. And together with that, with such a good appetite towards environmental projects, we see that investment covers for $27 trillion, and therefore a large share of investments are awaiting for their green projects to be invested to. It's not quite bad, including the situation with business and environmental and in nature tourism, because it falls within the sustainable development and meets the requirements of responsible attitude towards nature. As we see abroad, this green economy field is developing quite proactively. Their trend within 6 years proves that from 56 billion of rubles raised to 80 plus billion of rubles. So how does it feel in the Russian Federation in this term. From one side, not quite good as we would love it to have, because the development of green economy and green investment is in the very beginning. But it's not bad. It's good because we see a huge interest given by the state to this sphere, and we see that the state regulators are quite proactive. We now have the National Project on the Environment that stipulates the most important priorities for development in this sphere, and we see that environmental tourism development is part of these priorities, which is important for us. Together with that, the state is quite proactively develops measures of the state support given to this type of investment. It's not a secret that this growth of international investors was reasoned by proactive position of the state in development of different stimulus measures, motivating investors to contribute to social and environmental projects. And we see that a number of steps are undertaken by the Russian Federation. Moreover, at the moment, the government considers a draft of legislation defining the priorities in sustainable development, and moreover, it defines the role of Russia as the center of methodology in this field. And I think for you as participants of the conference, it should be interesting to come up with a list of measures to help the environmental tourism. And next slide tries to depict the needed measures of state support that should be approved in order to give economy and green tourism better support. We speak about financial and non-financial instruments. Indeed, we need to update the legislative framework and to decrease the financial barriers in order to provide for better conditions for development of green economy. From central bank, we expect to have these credits for green projects in tourism and to define them as low-risk projects, which would provide a better accessibility for the loans. And we indeed need financial flows and intakes. And these flows will contribute to better conditions in taxation, and we here mean those who support and contribute to green projects, and it's part of subsidies given to coupon system and other measures that are presented on this slide. All of the above instruments can be used in any of environmental projects, including the investment projects in natural and environmental tourism. On the whole, I think that this field does have very good perspective, and the forecast is very positive in bringing investments not only within Russia but from abroad. Currently, we speak about quite nearest future that does depend on proactive position expressed by the field and professionals of this field. What can we say about the touristic business and how much of interest is it to the banks? As far as we see, tourism industry is developing proactively, and if not the pandemic, the dynamic would be very positive and happy. The industry is presented by a large number of companies, more than 4,000 companies, but together with that, we see that there are not that much large key players. In major parts, the industry is presented by small and medium-sized enterprises. Therefore, we think it's quite logical to invest large funds from large stakeholders, including Gazprom Bank. As any of large banks, we are interested in working with bigger key players. The next thing refers to the following. The industry is presented by small and medium-sized entrepreneurship, and therefore it defines two fields of development for investment to the field. First, we focus on support given by the investors, given to the industry, and here it is important to understand the steps that the state will undertake in order to support such investors and the mechanisms that are used for support of investors working in green economy. It is relevant for this sector as well. And secondly, this is the development of financial support of banks given to the clients of industry. And here we mean consumers that use their services and products of green tourism. Gazprom Bank is working quite proactively with tourism sector. We work with about 460 different organizations, so it's quite a large segment, more than 10% of the market, and our database has large clients as Biblia Globus, Azimut, Cosmos, and others. And working with such organizations, we understand what we are to offer to the system, to the industry, in order to help us to make money in this field and to make the industry more attractive for their clients and to have a better return on investments and to raise their income. One of the most typical parts in the trends of the industry is digitalization. We see a dramatic growth of online tours and personalization of such tours. In this term, we feel quite an interesting trend should be for the banks to develop card projects, including partnership products and programs to bring together efforts and by this bring additional services to the clients that will bring the Russian tourism industry to the level of more attractiveness for the clients. And here we have good results. Russian youth card that we issued in 2 payment systems for our young travelers to travel within Russia and abroad, and a special bonus system, loyalty card with the discounts up to 30% for the services in hospitality and tourism industry. All different types of services like transport, accommodation, and so on. 25% for Russian railways and different discounts in partnership with different stakeholders. So such loyalty programs offer better involvement of clients all through the country and to raise the revenues. Another perspective direction in investment in tourism is leasing. Together with that, partnership programs in leasing that are able to be designed together with Ministry of Industrial Goods will allow to support local, national producers and to raise accessibility of local products, including such things as electric cars that are used in environmental tourism. They become more environmentally friendly, and in leasing the interest rate can hit the point of 0% rate for the leasing services. We work with medium and small business, and we think quite helpful would be to have an association of the key players in industry to become an integrator for and promoter of the interest for the industry. Last year, Gazprom Bank signed a dedicated agreement with the representatives of the tourism system with association, and therefore we came up with a list of services to draw money of the clients to become part of a more efficient economic model. And we have different directions, and here we speak about services in conversion, in exchange currency control, acquiring, and so and so and so. So we offer a whole set of tools of banking services. For environmental and nature tourism, both perspectives should be the market in investment based on ESG factors. And I think right now is the very good time for the industry to be involved in the policies regulated by the regulators and the state. Thank you very much. Natalia, if I am not mistaken, 460 large companies. No, 460 companies on the whole, not large stakeholders. We don't have a market of large companies that would hit these numbers. So basically, it's very good. Large business is good, and medium and small-sized enterprises is good for banks. So small and medium-sized business. So how do they feel? How do they feel after the pandemic and all the events? Well, yes, they were impacted very much, and we see the peculiarities, what we gain from our communication with the partners, and the union of the companies involved in hospitality and tourism. We work with them proactively, we have dialogue, we communicate with them, but they come up with interesting ideas and products like virtual tours and virtual environmental routes, and I really love projects that were implemented by Tsaritsina, including the environmental projects. And in fact, I cannot say clients, but visitors, guests, those who consume this service, the number has grown. What is the level of crediting in the industry? What about the amount of loans given? Yes, it grows, and I must say that representatives of tourism business is quite a difficult client for credit business, for loan business, for banks. Yes, we speak about the measures of support that were provided by the state. We need them. We need this support from the state.
Well, I would add that this conference is taking place for the third time, and it is good that we have the banking community joining us. I think that that's important because now we are looking in the right direction. And it was my pleasure to hear about the big amount of products that the financial and banking sphere can offer, apart from loans, the payment cards, but also the cash management services and so on. So the standard products that we can start applying right away. And this means that if bankers who start at the level of the entire country understand that we are interesting to them as customers, then it's the promise that our affairs will develop. And this is great news, because we need the dialogue, we need mutual understanding, economic understanding, because what we have seen so far, we have seen the legal community who considered us and try to understand how things work in tourism, but we also wanted to be seen by the financial community so that the bankers would understand our needs and concerns. Otherwise, our sphere would lack funds. Natalia, question to you. When you communicate with your colleagues, don't you think that they and the entire opinion is that the tourism is somewhere on the outside of main economic driving force? We have great potential, but it feels like we are underestimated. I have said that tourism industry is quite a complicated customer, and I will speak frankly on behalf of my bank, Gazprom Bank. But one of the reasons why we have to pay close attention to this is that the profitability at large is outside of the visibility. They are in the gray zone, and this is a serious risk for the banking community. The more transparent the financial reporting system is on behalf of the tourism organization, the more attractive they are for banks. And we have just to recognize that it all depends on you, and I can see it as an important area for cooperation with associations and some other legal entities that are being formed in tourism industry. Yes, we have to recognize that the pandemic has imposed lots of challenges. It's not an easy time to live in. Profitability is a big issue. And of course, measures of state support are very important and required. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for your industry and some other industries to just climb out of this gap. Because, but the support like cashback to end users and so on, these are very, very impressive stimuli. But the association is a good mechanism. I don't risk to take the responsibility to recommend enlargement of your players, mergers to form bigger players. But I think that around the world, still we have to recognize that SMEs deserve support, but we cannot just bring it all down to helping only big players. But as for the customer base, yeah, for us and for you, we have the same category of clients, so we have to communicate them. Well, what I like is that when we are talking about banks, then we now understand that banks are those who understand clearly the situation. They calculate the risks. They have to do this because they are responsible for the future of their financial loans and other flows. But the banks then have to see in advance of many others that some things are outside of our focus and prompt us to pay attention to certain risks. As for the social risks, they became strategic. Social risks have become the terminal risks for companies. And that's why I really appreciate this dialogue, is that that's what we need. That's what we have been lacking. Understanding of our community, of our industry from the point of view of the bankers. The banks do not have to deal with tourism as business. They do not have to conduct this business, but they have to understand us, and we need to become very interesting to them as customers. The question, the risk models for banks, how well can we calculate the risk of this or that player in this market, and environmental risks translated in terms of money? Well, I think that ESG approach is already established in the world. The financials and bankers are perhaps the most thrifty players, or they have to think about money in terms of economizing, and they are conservative in their approaches. But when we look about products that we offer them, we do not offer them a formal suit. We offer them something which is trendy, something like jeans and sweater. But this is analogy. So we have to offer something to the banks which would be interesting to them, which will clearly promise profits and long-term profits. The banks are not interested in giving loans for 3 weeks. They are interested in giving money for decades to come. And now the industry is starting discussing this approach. So that means that the awareness is growing. Of course, we are not we have not neared with the bankers enough, but it feels like we are becoming closer. Natalia, let us criticize our colleagues from the industry. You were absolutely right saying that the gray sector is unfortunately very big. So when you compare with other industries, perhaps the situation is similar to other industries as well. Up to 60% of the entire economy of the country is gray. But once we have a project and we need some funds, and you can just doubt that this will come through and the profits will really be feasible. So how ready you are with the dialogue on the projects that you find doubtful? Once some company comes to you, 460 players with whom you deal, this is not the entire industry. I think that 460, this is not quite a bad percentage of the entire industry. In any way, you are very right that this is the matter of how the dialogue is conducted and the search of mutual interests. And it's a matter of environmental soundness and social importance of project. For us, it's important because reality just pushes us to checking the products before we provide the loan into the portfolio. So SG is an instrument by which we check it. And many of our partners have announced the Sustainable Development Principles as their priority. And I absolutely agree now with you. You said that the risks now play a greater role in our relations. And there is research that's shown that if ESG and risks are correlated, then we have to consider them and balance them. And this is one of the guidelines which promises more sustainability and credit attractiveness of projects. And as I said in my presentation, it was also another opportunity to open access not only to the Russian investors, but also to international investment. Of course, there are certain complications, but nevertheless, we have the experience of Eurobonds issue. And it is clear that perhaps this should be more feasible for bigger projects, but there can be some industry, regional, or some other communities like associations, legal structures that will protect the interests of partners involved. What else can I say? Of course, any client is dear to us, but you are right saying that the bank cannot work with the risk of losing money and losing the investment, because it is not just to us, it is not just to the client. So I think that as for the increasing attractiveness of projects, I think that transparency is one of the main factors. The more transparent it is, the policy, the system of the decisions, if they are transparent, the more they're transparent, the more interesting you are to our banks, which conditions are important so that the industry could shape the sound investment client so that it would be more appealing to investors. Transparency, you said. What else? Search for other or additional areas of development. Something what is happening like digitalization, online services. This is a very, very prospective, promising area, and this allows flexibility for cooperation, including cooperation with banks, because let us say it straightforwardly, banks also are not just financial institutions, but we work also outside of our direct, immediate sphere of finance. And banks becoming partners in many other industries. We incorporate, we become like hubs. And I think that the industry-specific cooperation provides for more opportunities to express your consolidated standpoints and policies in relation with the regulator, but also with business. Thank you very much. Thank you, Natalia. Let us move forward. Yulia, please join us. And we invite you to join in and answer how you view the economy of our industry and with which instruments that are obvious do you agree and which you see promising for future in terms of healthier investment conditions and some other financial matters that perhaps need some amendments. Thank you very much for this invitation. It is my pleasure to join it. Thank you for this, and I appreciated what Natalia has outlined, and I would like to thank for having mentioned web bank and the pandemic, I should mention, really focused the importance of nature and ecotourism. We have become more aware of the value of the human life and nature and the needs in taking care of our health and fitness, and travel has gained a new dimension to us. And I think this is a trend. And I would like to just add that the prognosis which was given by the United Nations as for the development of tourism and the relaxation of border formalities, it hasn't come true, unfortunately. And for many tourism companies, that means that their policies need to be adjusted. And as it's been said, Web of Russia has conducted and is conducting a big amount of work on shaping the ecosystem at the national level, which we call the green financing and responsible business financing. We have managed to create the basic recommendations. These are the manuals that are published online for open access on our website. This is an important, profound document. We have also received lots of feedback, about 100 different suggestions to amend, not only from the Russian community, but also internationally. And the top level of taxonomy has been already specified. And here, let me speak in detail about several aspects of environmental and nature tourism that have been focused by us. We think that they are associated with the creation of infrastructure in certain regions, but also protection of forests and rehabilitation of forests, recovery, and also development of eco-friendly transport and eco-friendly power, energy, and the water-saving approaches. So this is the inter-ministerial, inter-industrial scope in which our objectives become more complicated, and that's why we consider with greater attention today at the level of our state board on ecology and at the level of the jury of the competition organized, and we congratulate the competition winners. So all the applications were very, very interesting. At the same time, we know that we haven't won the support, but the reasons are that the winners are those who were supported by regions. The state support as of today is for such projects very important. And the next factor of success is the well-structured project. So the structure of the project is the key to success. it reflects on the ability of the organizer to structure and to arrange the investment objectives and to foresee the feasible results that can be measured. Unfortunately, far from many projects could boast this clear structure, and besides, we can feel the shortage of competencies in the industry, particularly companies which call for involvement of low margin, low profit margin loans, and the capacity is needed to see the margin between the responsibility of the state and responsibility of the provider and so on. So we have discussed it with Ms. Panova from the ministry, the different instruments, different approaches that would involve the banking sector more actively into development of projects on the specially protected areas and tourism destinations and concessions that provide for opportunities for us to invest into interesting objectives. As for green tourism, this is not as simple as it might seem. We have understood that tourism quite often travels alone, independently, and then still has to have the insurance and sufficient finance, and of course the entire trip needs to be considered as still some tailor-made project. And of course digital services have a crucial role in provisions for such needs, and digital services depend on provision of good, reliable communication lines, internet access, which is not affordable in many or not available in many parts of Russia. And that's why there are objectives that we set forth, and the projects need to pay back if they have to install such lines. So the objectives then have some added parameters, but not always parameters, not all the projects provide collateral, and the credit resources quite often fail because the collateral is not sufficient. But there are other instruments like leasing, insurance, and insurance perhaps is one of the underestimated resources or tools for green financing that could be used more often. And once again, I would like to outline that because we wanted to consider several projects, particularly in the northern and polar areas, it turned out that environmental and nature tourism was their nature, but there was insufficient cooperation between the management of businesses with the nature reserves and recreational territories adjoining them. And it was very difficult to see whether the support of the local population is available, because the locals quite often do not see themselves as the participants of this change, but they feel that the anthropogenic stress and pressure on these areas would be a negative factor, and quite often locals are not quite supportive. So the public outreach will gain more support of the local population, which will raise the investment potential and attractiveness of the project, and in the long run improve the conveniences and safety of travelers. And yet another important small detail is that there are myths about what eco-friendly or active tourism is. Quite often people associate it only with fishing and hunting, and from the foreign or international taxonomy, fishing and hunting is not part of the green tourism or eco-tourism, on the opposite. So in this respect, we have to define the criteria very clearly, so that to define what eco-tourism is, what is green tourism, and so that the taxonomy of green tourism, which unfortunately, well, perhaps fortunately, in the world is not clearly defined, so far. So these projects that refer to green tourism should have clear parameters, and we invite in this respect all the stakeholders who are wishing to contribute into this awareness. Our contacts are available, and we would like the support of those who could help us understand the criteria, what can be called green tourism, what can be given green finance. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yulia. And
Я считаю, что актуально. У нас, к сожалению, пока еще недостаточно.
how would you assess greenwashing problem? I think that our team at Web is aimed at first issues be the green in nature, because unfortunately not in every case green means a priority for business in Russia. And quite often green is just a veil behind which there are other things. And people think that it's just an entrance into having bigger resources, loaned or bigger investments. And I think that this is quite a problem, but I'm sure that we have to be very cautious, and the entire community needs to help bankers not to make mistakes. Thank you very much. I wanted just to focus on the following. First, I invite you both to our future conference, because what I understand that what we need is to bring people to nature. Bankers are also people, and bankers also need to see the nature as it is, so that to understand what we all talk about when we raise issues of ecotourism. And when you mention internet, you have to see that when internet is next to the lake where you can breathe fresh air in the mountains, and when you come in for a couple of days, but you are charged by these 2 days of being in the nature, this is incomparable with other things. So we invite you to join this conference, because you are human beings, and we are sure the bankers also are human beings who want their children, grandchildren, preserve nature, enjoy nature in future. And this conference is the way of promoting this. That's how we increase our community here, by inviting people from other communities and say, come, join, and look at this nature and what can be done.
I must say, you now turn into ambassador and evangelist, and you try to bring people to your religion. Okay, no problem. All right, but I want to say the following, very simple as it is. Money in banks is the same. Banks are those managing money. They are our defenders. They protect us. They say, this is good, this is bad. You can go there, go ahead. And here you don't go. So not necessarily you should do green finance. It's not about that at the moment. We now speak about products that should be available from banks that tourism business can use. Not necessarily green, but it should be in place. Green finance is another step, another level, another rearrangement of this sector. But before we get there, why don't we start right now? Why cannot we look at the projects that are implemented right now? Why cannot we support it right now, right away? Something in infrastructure, not necessarily the companies we should support. We can speak about the regions. We can speak about their needs. And regions invest a lot. We speak about state. In this conference, we discuss the national project in tourism that is implemented by the state, and we say that we need those going for money. And we need to understand the state that we live in. So not necessarily we want to do this precise story. We need to get away from this green washing story. We need to look at this a bit wider. So it's not about ATM machine, it's about internet. how do you bring ATM machine? Do you know whether there is enough internet there to make it operating? I didn't expect it from you. You actually say that bankers are saints almost. So, but this is true. But look, this, we still have ladies from bank sector. There are no even guys. Where are all the tough guys? They are ladies, nice ladies. What else can I say? I can only say they are beautiful, wonderful, and banks are good guys, good girls in this contest. Okay, so COVID story. We did not change the system radically, but now you say that we stopped crediting this type of industry. Let's not name it. But don't you think you give too much trust to bankers? Maybe they should do something different. But you heard what they were saying. They were saying loans, loans. What about loans? No, but let's discuss who blocked the cards, who blocked the cash management services, who did it. But we know that banks make money out of anything and everything. This is why we love them, why we envy them, frankly. But no one of them during pandemic, no one stopped any services during pandemic. This is part of the system when they speak about, interest rates. Well, this part of the business. We speak that banks can bring benefits to the system. And we start speaking about products, bank products related to ESG finance, green finance, but the industry needs it now. And now we have an anchor investor, and here we're in the state. Why do I invite everyone to come to our platform? Because here you can meet those responsible for decisions. Bankers need to know who's responsible for money, who will bring money back. So, and here we have people, those who take the commitment, take the responsibility, and those saying, this is the right way to invest, this is the right thing to invest into, and then we'll return your money back. Okay. Do we have anyone to take this unveiled compliments given by Sergey? So what kind of competences do we speak? What do we lack in the industry? So are they able to report within their whole life they've been doing reserves and national parks and protected area operations? Are they educated enough to work with banks? Financially educated? Can they issue the submit reports? How are we? Where are we? Do you have any comments on that? I'll pause at the moment. I will not give any comments. Is it that bad? Do you feel that you need to educate the industry so much? Well, the thing is that we absolutely always teach and train. And just recently, before the meeting, I've studied the results of the corporate training, and I see how high the demand is in training. And within the time of pandemic, we have plus 6,000 of trainees coming to us each month. So pandemic was quite a challenge for us, and very efficiently we used this process and this time. We tuned the very efficient mechanism of online education. In March, we had about 2,700 employees going through online education courses, and now we have up to 7,500 students, trainees coming through us via online sessions, and the demand is quite different in different spheres. For example, course based on personal development, communications, creative potential development. So they're very life-oriented, life-related. So the courses are very diverse, and this is the demand we have. And tourism is the industry where people need to get education and training, and it's a lifelong experience. And they need to learn how to communicate with partners, with clients, how to manage their personal time, risk-oriented management, many things. It's very diverse, and I can share what kind of educational programs we have, and it's very relevant. I'm sure it will be good for any company. Yes, we will ask you to share your experience. And you dropped this phrase about competences. What is missing in the industry? What the stakeholders lack? Well, the stakeholders, the members of the community in this industry, as we can assess from the projects, they lack financial modeling experience because initially when they design the project, bankers do not want to dive into the nature of business, and in order to understand whether the product is of bank interest, we need a special understanding who and where may invest money. What about the human man-made load? So it's about feeling how all these elements fall together. The banks come when the model is already in place, and they try to do the feasibility study and assess the risks and understand what mechanisms should be involved. So at the preliminary stage of preparation and description of the competences, there are some gaps, and I don't want to drop the names of those who are getting to the final stage of their master plans and projects, but sometimes we see this absolutely outrageous forecasts on visits, but we see there is no accessibility. So there are gaps. It's a large, diverse discussion, but as for the competences based of the feasibility study is important, and we, banks and those involved in responsible business management and green finance, I think we should come together and do some master classes for the startups, maybe to describe these very basic models, and I think Gazprom Bank will give me a hand in this. And I don't want to say this box solutions, it's not good for nature and environment, but with some basic rules for the starters to help them with this initial phase, and then we'll get to the project, and we'll jump in later on. So just to help them at the start point position. All right. So it's a complex of competences in finance and other fields. So I would like to ask you to resume the conversation when we speak about money and tourism and sustainable development and environment. So it's a whole range of concepts. How do they meet? And if they meet, how and when, and where are this common, where are those common grounds and momentums? What is lacking? The vision is lacking, and there is no vision. We started this session with these targets of sustainable development. The objectives of sustainable development are in place till 2030, and we today now discuss the vision up to 2050 in protected areas field. And we say we would love to have 30% of the planet to be under protection by 2050. And we want this be done in order to have good life and healthy life globally. But what about mathematics? The mathematics prove if we have 30% of protected areas, who will pay for this? So who will pay for this? Fisheries, natural resources. Who will pay for this? We lose money. What about money? We want this and that, but who will pay for this? So the economy must work, and we understand that there is a vision, there is an economy. So what is the nature of this economy? This 30% must pay for themselves. So zero in expenditures will be quite good. Who will help? Tourism will help. So in fact, tourism is the instrument, the economic instrument to pay for our living. As for finance, the situation is following. The environmental tourism speaks about 30% protected areas that will give us plot for making money. People will have a chance to spend money, and it will help us to protect us in planet from hazards, from risks. And now we have these risks as decrease of payment, decrease of money and made. And again, 30%, $600 billion will be the effect, economic effect, if we have finally 30% of territories protected. So this will be the surplus. This is the real result. This is about money and finance. But it will be possible if we look at the situation not within a 10 years perspective, but more than that. If we do long time planning, long forecast, this will be the forecast. If we take the right perspective, if you plan it right, then we'll be able to hit this number of $600+ billion in surplus. Tourism is one of the key industries in the world. Tourism is our future. Tourism is economy and money. Tourism is about insurance and banking. Any corporate can be hosted on natural side, and it will be better than somewhere the restaurant, and people will be happy, but it will also bring an additional effect to become winners. We are the champions then, if we take this path. And it is about the cooperation of state and business. So thank you for evangelism. Thank you for being this ambassador, wonderful, great ambassador, what you believe in. So we've closed our session focused on economy, business, money, and banking. And thank you all for contribution. And then in 2, 3, 5 minutes, we'll draw conclusions of our wonderful conference. Thank you very much.